Senator Bell, Pat does big ideas.
Big ideas have big results.
Big ideas have big results.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. This is a presentation on SB 879. This is the Affordable Housing Bond Act of 2016. Over the last several months, our committee in Transportation and Housing in the Senate, which I chair, had 3 informational hearings on housing and homelessness across California. We heard from academics, developers, advocates, and other housing experts, and the message could not have been more clear. California is in an affordable housing crisis, and the state needs to take bold action to add to the housing stock. California's expensive rental housing has a disproportionate impact on the middle class and poor, and the housing shortage has left more than 1.5 million Californians' lowest income households without access to affordable housing. California's homeless population rose by almost 2% last year, putting the number right now at 115,000 people. That's a daily count, including families, veterans, and children. We know these staggering numbers all too well because we see it in our districts every day. Now, I stand before you today to present a solution. This is SB 879, the Affordable Housing Bond Act of 2016, which will add to available housing stock available to homeless individuals and hardworking families with low to moderate incomes by investing $3 billion in new construction, rehabilitation, and preservation housing. The Bond Act is modeled after the Prop 1C, which was passed in 2006, 58% yes. All areas of the state voted for it, which to date has led to the construction of 92,000 housing units. That Bond Act was a success. Similarly, this bill, SB 879, seeks to invest in critical housing programs, including multifamily housing programs, CalHome, those are first-time home buyer loans, transit-oriented development housing, and farm worker housing program, the Joe Cerna program. Investments in these programs also make good economic sense and will create jobs and benefit local communities. Now, the National Association of Home Builders estimated the one-year impacts. This is just for building 100 rental apartments in a typical local area. This will include $12 million in local income, $2 million in taxes, and other revenue for local governments, and 161 jobs. That's just building 100 rental units. As I said before, the last measure produced 92,000 units. So this could have a very strong economic impact on our economy. Additionally, the annual recurring impacts of building 100 rental apartments include $3 million in local income, $500,000 in taxes and revenue, and 44 local jobs. That's the annual impact. Additionally, according to the California Housing Partnership Corporations, every 70 cents invested in affordable housing can help leverage $3 in federal funds through various means. The bill will have a relatively modest impact on the California debt service. According to the Department of Finance, the projected total general fund revenues of $121 million, the general fund revenues, and the total debt service will be $7.89 billion for the debt service outstanding. Assuming this housing bond were to pass, and assuming 5%, which is way over what they're selling the bonds now, 5%, if we just said 5%, just for purpose of discussion, this will generate $195 million in additional debt service. Of course, the bonds are never sold immediately. They're sold over time. So this is like the Prop 1C, they play out the sale of the bonds. So this will not be a one-time kind of thing. It'll be played out in case of Prop 1C, over a decade. You know, they played out the selling of the bonds. This increases, if we did it all at once, this increases the debt service to $8 billion or so. According to the Department of Finance and the State Treasurer's Office, the debt service ratio of 2016-17 is 6.54%. If the bond passed, it would raise it to 6.69%, or 15 hundredths of a percent increase. The bond on its own will not solve the housing crisis, but the investment in these existing programs is a critical piece of the solution. Time for action is now, and I respectfully ask for your vote. I'd like to point out in the hearings that generated from the Transportation Housing Committee, there are now, in terms of the Senate, something like 7 or 8 housing bills that currently exist that propose solutions to housing, ranging from Senator Wachowski's bill, which is accessory structures. We have Senator Mitchell's bill to create a task force on affordable housing and homelessness, and there's all these different.
And then you've got the Assembly leadership issues.
The Assembly has a package which requires an investment, a one-time investment of about $1.4 billion into housing. So it is a priority. We have these packages of bills. In terms of the difference between the Assembly and the Senate, this bill is relatively modest compared in terms of the annual cost to investing $1.4 billion. So there's a difference there. I hope that those issues can be resolved. We can have a housing effort this year in the legislature. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Chair and members, Maureen Higgins, representing the California Housing Consortium in support of this bill. The author did a great job of laying out the need from all the hearings that the committee has had. I would just add that over the last few years, we have lost over $1.5 billion a year in funding for affordable housing, between the loss of $1 billion a year in redevelopment funds and about $500 million a year in bond funds, in addition to the loss of some federal funding. And that funding shortfall has not been made up. There are a range of housing needs in this state, and previous bond funding has been a really critical source of funding, and the programs that were developed as a result of those bonds are proven programs that have been oversubscribed. The demand has been huge, and as I said, for a variety of needs to meet the needs of California. So for that reasons, we are in strong support of the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Joseph Bonniwell with Housing California here in support. I want to echo the comments that preceded mine, and I just want to talk a little bit about an affordable home as being really fundamental for any individual or family attempting to achieve financial and social independence. And I think we often talk about housing finance in a vacuum, but it's really imperative that we consider the co-benefits and what it means to these families to have a home that's affordable and safe. So I just want to talk about a couple of those. An affordable home is going to increase an individual's ability to access healthcare and the quality of healthcare that they receive. A stable home environment will improve the educational outcomes for children. Everyone is probably aware that brain development and cognitive development decreases when children experience housing instability. An affordable home will increase the ability of a homeless mother or father to access subsidized child care. And when a formerly incarcerated homeless individual has a home, they're less likely to recidivate because they have a stable home from which they can connect with rehabilitative services. So I just ask that you consider these as other impacts beyond the fiscal ones that'll help us build towards alleviating poverty throughout the state. Thank you.
What's the strategically, if you step back for a minute, this has been an issue that we constantly face year after year. We've been through this dance a lot. So we passed the voters, we put this on the ballot, and the voters pass it. How big of a problem have you solved? Because strategically, what's the orders of magnitude of the problem? How big of a problem does it solve? Of course, everybody who's got a house is going to do better. We know that in terms of these issues, but are we going to be back here and you got a bond that's going to be financed over a long period of time? You're going to have debt service from the state to be able to pay that, and then you're going to say in 3 years from now you're going to come back, the sky's falling, we have this big crisis, how are we going to afford that? If you can you put this in the larger context of how big the problem is as you see it going forward, and how
big of a solution is this to that problem?
Right. Well, I think you make a great point, and I think what the senator made clear is that we're talking this year about kind of crisis responses to an epidemic of a housing crisis, basically. And this isn't happening in a housing finance vacuum, so to speak, but we're also looking at broader policy changes when it comes to housing, when it comes to local controls, when it comes to tax reform. So there is a long-term goal, but we're in a moment right now where we have an opportunity to invest and to capitalize on momentum to house people who are immediately in the crisis of housing instability or homelessness.
Yeah. I just think that you do yourself, I mean, Senator Bell's been working hard on this and done a lot of homework on it. I'm just thinking from an advocacy point of view for someone who's been watching this for a few decades, that you do yourself a better service, I think, when you frame it and you frame what we're doing and how it fits in the larger context, because you lose your credibility when you keep coming back and every time there's a new crisis. I've been through this crisis 6 or 7 times, right? And I'm not suggesting they're not. Okay, I don't mean to mean that, because you look more and more people are coming here. There's a whole bunch of reasons for the circumstance. And personally, the economic feedback effect from doing housing is nothing less than extraordinary when you talk to the Department of Finance. How many people it puts to work, how much revenue it creates, all of those things. So in addition to the societal benefits, there's the whole other side of the ledger benefits, which are pretty extraordinary. We've seen that in building schools and the like. Only I would suggest is, you know, try to paint this in a larger context of, here's what we're doing, here's how it fixes, here's our picture going forward, so you're thinking longer term, especially now that you've got legislators here, they're going to be here for 12 years, and they're going to take a longer term view, and they're going to remember the sky's falling arguments when you come back to them the next time. You know what I mean? Just a thought.
I can,
Yeah.
I'm listening to what you're saying, and
Yeah.
I can respond.
Of course.
Just sort of a local official that put 26 years as both a city council member and a
planner.
advisor. So if the state, you look, you know, when you're a local official, you're looking at the state in terms of what is their priority. And if you see that housing is not a priority for the state of California,
Yeah.
and the state's not putting up the dough to contribute to the solution, what's going to happen to you as a local official is you're not going to take the step out and say, I'm not going to sit here by myself and do it. I need help. I need the federal, the state, everybody to pitch in to solve this problem. So I think by putting a bond out there, it will stimulate investment from local governments, and it will stimulate activities from a more aggressive, assertive position in local governments to help match the state or even exceed the state's investment. And I believe this strongly. I believe in this, and in terms of my experience in the city council in San Jose, where we built 20 or 30,000 units of affordable housing by creating a housing department and actually investing not just redevelopment money, but a lot of other sources into affordable housing, because we continually have problems with affordable housing in San Jose.
San Jose, affordable house means $1 million.
Well, we're trying to, what we don't want to have happen is, I think.
No, I know, I'm just kidding.
Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to stimulate more local investment. And like I said earlier, there's about 8 bills in the Senate.
Right.
And if you look at the total package, you're going to see that ranging from Senator Canella's tax credit for renters, there's Senator Wachowski's bill, No Place Like Home, Senator De Leon's initiative to solve the mental health homeless issue. The cities need to see this action coming from the state, and if they can see this, there will be a more proper tone, and it also sends a signal to an investment community, the private sector, because, quite frankly, in housing, it's always a gamble when you invest in housing, and people that want to build housing want to see that the governments are committed to it, and I think this would also send that tone. That right tone to people. Quite frankly, I think this measure, like the last measure, it was done 10 years ago. We should have done one maybe 5 years ago, but we weren't economically stable enough to do that. So yes, we should do these occasionally. We should do these housing measures. Prior to 2006, we did one in 2002.
I know.
So there was
Yeah.
less of a gap. Now we have a 10-year gap, and in that 10-year period, the state budget was going down and then back up. Redevelopment housing was eliminated. There is a need to set the tone right now and put it out there that we're supporting housing. And we want the state and everybody to pitch in and put investments into this.
My only concern about this, which I've expressed to you privately and I want to express publicly, I mean, I think the cause is right. I certainly have been working on it for a lot of years myself. I don't know if the level you have, but you know, what's the ballot experience going to be like? Everybody's polling this stuff on a one-off. You've got probably I was just talking this yesterday with respect to Senator Laura. You have 17, 18 ballot measures, maybe 20 plus the other ones we're putting on, plus, you know, best guess, 220 local tax measures. What does that look like in terms of the big picture? And you'll figure that out as you go forward from a leadership perspective, and we got to move it on. I agree with you. I'm just sensitive to the voter experience and these, you know, collisions among these very important issues where people just get frustrated. So often is the case. You know, unfortunately, the Constitution requires that we vote on these things, and voters look at them and they go, oh my God, what are you doing here and making us vote for all this stuff? Yet that's what the rules are. So it's just express that sensitivity. Let me see if there's any other support of this measure.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dan Carrig on behalf of the League of California Cities in support. This is a component of the state's infrastructure needs, the need for funds for affordable housing. As some of the witnesses already touched on, there were some resources prior to this. We've lost a lot of the resources, and we're basically kind of starting over in terms of trying to reassemble some resources. There's been some mention in this discussion as well of the infrastructure bond package of 10 years ago. Well, if you stand back and look at it, there's an effort. You know, there was a water bond a couple years ago that voters supported that. That was part of the infrastructure package in the past. There's a school bond that's on the ballot. I understand it's polling pretty well. I think schools are an important part of a community. Housing is obviously an important part, and I know there's a lot of discussions in this building, and Senator Bell's a leader on it, and trying to get some infrastructure resources on transportation. So we have infrastructure challenges. In terms of local contributions, a state bond will potentially bring some local resources to the table. It would be a lot better if we had more flexibility in terms of the vote threshold to do our own housing bonds locally. I know the city of San Francisco passed a housing bond locally. The city of LA tried it, I think, a number of years ago, $1 billion housing bond in LA, and couldn't quite get to the 2/3 vote threshold. What we need are more resources so that we can work with the state, partner with the state, but also begin to take care of our own challenges locally. So we do support the bill and appreciate moving to support.
Thank you.
Nicole Wertelman on behalf of Habitat for Humanity California. We're in support of the bill and appreciate the additional investment in home ownership.
Thank you so much.
Good morning. Anya Lawler on behalf of the Western Center on Law and Poverty and the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation in support.
Thank you.
Sylvia Solis on behalf of the City of Santa Monica in strong support.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, Roxanne Miller representing the City of San Jose. We're in the process of finalizing our position. We want to thank the Senator and this committee for your deliberative discussion today. Time is of the essence, and we're most interested in this bill moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman and members, Paul Yoder on behalf of the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors and the City and County of San Francisco and Mayor Ed Lee in support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Opposition? Don't see any.
Not looking hard enough, Mr. Chairman.
Purple tie for Prince. You're supposed to wear that tomorrow.
Is that tomorrow? I didn't know that, Mr.
Hey,
Chairman.
just wear it again. You can wear a tie twice. It's no big deal.
It is my favorite color, sir.
Very good.
Thank you. Members, good morning. David Wolf.
Not because you're a supporter of SEIU? Just wondering. Come on.
Not going there, Mr. Chairman. Members, good morning. David Wolf with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We are in opposition. Members, the problem here is not just that we need more affordable housing. I don't think that addresses the question really that should be before us. It's the fact that we need more housing, period. The Legislative Analyst's Office did release a study last year saying that we need 100,000 new units of housing across the state of California just to keep pace. We would argue that throwing more money at housing, especially statewide bond debt that will last for decades, which, by the way, we should be voting on, fails to address really the underlying issue. We need members to look at why it is so hard to build housing in California. Why are building permits so expensive? Can we craft reasonable CEQA reform? It's interesting, members, Zelman and Associates, which is a housing market firm, I just read this yesterday, actually, they surveyed hundreds of builders across metro areas across the United States and found that average impact fees are up 45% since 2005. And they range as high as $72,000 in San Francisco, the highest impact fee in the nation. 6 of the top 7 most expensive average impact fees are in California metro areas, which I think speaks to the point that we do need to look at some of these other issues and making housing more affordable through reasonable means without imposing additional debt on the people of California. And finally, as was alluded to by both the author and the committee analysis, I do think we need to be mindful of the debt that we're imposing on future generations. The debt service ratio in California currently is around 7%. And members, I'm not going to say that number is too high or too low. That's a figure that's open for discussion, but it is worth noting that that debt needs to be paid first out of the general fund before any other programs can be funded. So we do need to be mindful of the debt that we are advancing on Californians, and we also need to be mindful of the governor's recent comments about the wall of debt. Obviously, he's not enamored with a $9 billion school bond. We don't know whether he'll be enamored with this initiative or some of the other things that are on the ballot. And just in closing, members, I really do think it is important that we look at prioritizing the amount of debt that we have in the state. Is affordable housing more important than something like high-speed rail or the Delta tunnels or a school bond? And I think those are questions that we need to ask and answer before we put the votes on this and put it on the ballot in November. I ask for a no vote.
Thank you. Others in opposition? Questions? Mr. Morlock? Question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Wolf just sort of attacked my first point, and that is we really got to figure out how to make it better and less expensive to build housing, period. So I won't belabor that, but this will be a GO bond, and so I was looking for how we pay for it. And Senator Bell, you mentioned that we have $121 million in general fund revenues, and that was one of the figures you gave as you were looking at the debt service of $7.8 billion and the annual cost of $195 million. So where does the $121 million in revenues come from?
Department of Finance.
Okay, how do they determine that number?
General fund revenues, yeah.
Right. Well, what creates the revenues?
Their estimate for next year, what the revenue will be.
Okay, maybe I'm not.
Total general fund.
So we build low-income housing. How does that generate revenue? Is that from the
121 is the total budget, general fund budget of the state. $121 billion.
121 billion. Okay,
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Okay, that's why I'm.
Billion
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, and what I've been doing, Senator Bells, I've been
$7.89 billion
right about
currently in the debt service. So we got about a.
I figured it'd be about 167 million a year at that number in debt service, but you have 195. So
Well, I used the higher 5%. Now, the latest sales were much lower than that, as you know. The treasurer sold refinancing bonds for some of the GO bonds at a much lower rate than that. So 5% is a high water mark. These bonds will be sold over time. They won't be sold right immediately. They'll be sold as we have housing
issued about $3 billion in bonds over my career.
Yeah, right. So did I. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, you have a passion for the income tax structure and or just tax, I should say, revenues. And so I've been trying to figure out for myself, with all these things that we're piling on, a school bond of $500 million, a low-income housing bond, which would cost us about, well, say 167 on conservative side, 195 on a liberal side. And how does that all get paid for? So I've been trying to take the data from the state and the Department of Finance and do a 10-year projection, and our revenues will be lower than our expenses, and we are piling on. And if we have a recession, then we have this fixed cost, which we're required to pay, as Mr. Wolf had explained, which is going to make it real difficult for those of us that want to be here 12 years. Senator Wynn and I spent 8 years just saying no and cutting and laying off individuals, 1,000 employees. And so that's not a fun drill. So I want to be real cautious about where we go moving forward. So I'm going to have real trouble with this one, Senator Bell. I would ask Mr. Chair and Senator Bell, does the state of California have any land that is near a metropolitan area that we can start freeing up, so you have no cost for the land, and then we build low-income housing on our own property, and then we actually have it as a revenue generator? You know, I'm new to the state, so I don't know what your inventory is, but it just seems as if there's other solutions than to encumber and keep encumbering us when we don't have the wherewithal in the future to pay for it all. So that's my thoughts, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
The only thing I would just suggest before you respond, Senator Bill, just real quickly, is number one is when you looked at the analysis, the yields for 10 years, about 2%, 3% for a longer-term bond. So you've doubled up, quite frankly, the estimates in terms of costs, number one. Number two is when you look at a balance sheet, you have to look at the other side of the ledger, which unfortunately one of the instruments of government that we don't have that does a very good job in that regard is we always predict the one side of the ledger, but we don't predict the other. We know that there's a significant economic feedback effect. For example, in infrastructure, it's estimated that 74 cents of every dollar comes back in the terms of payroll tax and all other kinds of estimates. Secondly, the avoided costs we saw in San Diego. Well, then, secondly, I was going to finish. The second point is the avoided costs over long term in terms of what government costs. We saw in the homeless issues, people in Assemblyman Mainshine was 300 and some thousand for homeless people, and he got it reduced to 25,000. We're spending all this money, and so when you look at the impacts of people not having housing, what the costs of government are simply extraordinary. I wish I could quantify that, but I just think when you do the diagnostic, you need to look at both sides of the ledger. In fairness, whatever the numbers are, but you need to look at both sides of the ledger.
The answer is that business people say that one of the most important things they need to survive economically in this state is to have the state and all the governments together stand up and have an action plan to build more affordable housing. That is absolutely one of the top priorities to stimulate business in California. If we don't have housing and people have to spend a huge amount of money and go into more and more debt to live here, paying for their mortgages and high mortgages without having the opportunity to buy lower first-time buyer assistance or the lower cost of multifamily housing, what's going to happen is it's not going to be an attractive place to work. And people are moving further and further from our metropolitan areas, spending more and more money on travel, more and more money on their housing cost, and it's becoming a very unattractive place for business. So housing is very important for business, and that's why we have a lot of support from business in this measure.
Any questions? Any questions from the members? Senator Havlin, do you have something, sir?
No, of course I'll be supporting this today, and I just had just a question for clarification, and actually I've been around the legislature enough to watch our debt service go from about 5 or 6% of the general fund to double digits during the downturn, so it does affect, and it's not just this particular bond, but it's the accumulation over time of bonds. I was just curious if it was two things. Obviously, a revenue bond would be better because that's a lower financing rate when you have a dedicated revenue stream. Whatever happened to the real estate discussion on, it was a fee on the sale of homes, and it was going to create a dedicated revenue stream. And I know Speaker Atkins had that bill, and by one vote was not approved over in the Assembly. Is there that? I think you need all the tools for, this is a huge issue, so I support the bond, but I was curious about that, if anyone has an update. Are we looking at that?
No.
The realtors finally got to be okay with that.
Not been introduced.
Just because revenue bonds, I'm actually more supportive of them than keep adding on the GO bonds, just because of the cost.
Business people say if you're going to borrow, now's the time to borrow when the cost of money is low. So you can argue whether or not you should have borrowing. That's one question. But if you are, you might as well borrow when the money's 2% money. You know, I remember the days of 18% money, 2% money. It's you know, by far it's just a smart thing to do. Everybody I know in the finance world say, you know, now's the time.
And my final question, Senator Bell, I was just trying to understand your way of thinking. $300 million goes to the Transit-Oriented Development Implementation Fund. That's through greenhouse gas emissions, correct?
Yeah,
Reduction fund.
that would help us build affordable housing now, affordable housing units next to transit-oriented development. As you know, one of the problems with transit-oriented development is sort of this, if you have no affordable housing component, you have sort of a gentrification aspect where the property values go up because you're building this wonderful transportation center, and the property values then go up, and the economics of it are against building affordable housing when that happens. So you have to have some.
My only question on that was, I just want.
That's the reason we put.
Is how you quantify and mix that in with the other funds as far as GHG reductions. I mean, this is a better source of revenue, perhaps.
This would be another source of revenue.
But it comes into the same pot, but
yeah.
It may be problematic on the auditing portion of challenges regarding that expenditure.
Yes, I'm gonna also be supporting this, but understanding that we're gonna have a broader conversation with leadership in both houses. But my question is, the last housing bond, has anybody made an analysis about, you know, were we able to create money or create housing? Did we expend the money? I'm just curious to see, you know, the analysis on that.
It created 92,000 housing units, so it was very successful. Although it's been 10 years since that passed, and you know, there was one in 2002, and then there was one in 2006. The one in 2006 was about the same amount of money as this one, and it created 92,000 units.
Thank you.
So it was very successful. It's considered to be very successful. One of the aspects was that it allowed California to take the federal tax credit and maximize our return there. If we don't have this bond, I think we lose a lot of the federal tax credit money. We're sort of leaving federal money on the table, if you want to put it that way. So this proposal essentially generates about $3 of federal funds for every dollar we put up. So if you say $3 billion, it'll generate another 9 or so. And then the private investment in local government, it just sort of creates that synergy we need to build and make the housing affordable. That's the important thing. To make it affordable, make the rents.
Do you have another question, Senator Morlock?
Yeah, maybe, Mr. Chair, I keep thinking of that old phrase, you know, we found the problem is us. And we are making it so difficult to build housing, period. And I'm just wondering, is there someone here, like you're passionate about fixing the tax system, is there someone here that's really carrying the ball and trying to fix CEQA and make just building housing?
Senator Pavley.
Pavley is the advocate, the star, the torchbearer, because this CEQA, you know, the more we didn't have to do a lot of votes in Orange County on housing projects. It never came to the Board of Supervisors because most of the county is incorporated. Very little unincorporated areas, so I didn't get the city council experience like you know, a lot of these. But I'm sitting here learning so much about how we have made it so difficult to build housing, period. And how do we get some of that nonsense out of the way? How do we fix CEQA? Because I see this as the right problem. We all identify the problem, but the problem was created by government, and now we've got the wrong patch to solve the problem. So it's the wrong solution, and it's just going to create more problems down the road.
Anything further, Senator Bell?
No, I urge your vote. This will have a big positive impact on the economy. My feeling is the amount of impact on the economy and the fiscal impact of this will more than equal any increased debt service that's caused by this bond. Housing is an asset. It creates jobs in the community. This will generate plenty of revenue from employment, and we need that now, and we need the housing now. So I urge and I vote.
We have a motion. Senator Pavley, do pass to appropriations. Secretary, open the roll.
Hertzberg?
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Wynn? Bell? Aye. Bell, aye. Hernandez? Laura? Aye. Laura, aye. Morlock? No. Morlock, no. Pavley? Pavley, aye.
4 to 1, we'll hold that open. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Stone, Assemblymember Stone. File item number 7, AB 1817,